Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with episode 785 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened this week across NXT and AEW, but not only that, there are a couple straggling WWE items that we will be discussing at the top of the show, along with another pretty big news item that all of you wanted Silver King to weigh in on before the week was out. We will get to all of that, I promise you, but off the top, I would be remiss if I did not remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. On Twitter and Blue Sky, you get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, and all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show and vote in our pre- and post-show polls surrounding premium live events like the one coming up this Sunday, WWE Clash in Paris. And on that note, for some reason you didn't realize it, we already have a WWE Clash in Paris Ultimate Preview in the podcast feed. And of course, on Sunday, we will have a WWE Clash in Paris instant analysis. So yes, a 3-episode week right here at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And I also mentioned that you can subscribe to us on YouTube. If you do, you will have access to full-length audio episodes and full-length video interviews across the board on social media at Getting Overcast. Now, there will be timestamps in the episode description as always, so you can jump across to our segments, be it NXT, AEW, what have you.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
Before we get into any of that, there's a couple items we need to discuss off the top of this show. First and foremost, some interesting information coming in to the Getting Over Wrestling podcast that is not going to be that surprising for any of you who have been keeping up with Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown over the last couple of years. But we had two sources confirm to Getting Over that commentary changes are coming to the programs as soon as this week. Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett will be moving off of Friday Night SmackDown over to Monday Night Raw, and Michael Cole and Corey Graves will be taking the SmackDown responsibilities. This is what happens for WWE now during football season. Joe Tess is usually calling a big SEC game these days for ESPN on Saturdays, and the back and forth going from wrestling on Friday to college football on Saturday, it's just not feasible on a week-to-week basis. Hell, even if these games were in the same city, I don't necessarily know that it's feasible for someone to do that back-to-back in consecutive days. So, of course, yes, they will be moving to the red brand, and Cole and Corey Graves will be moving to the blue brand. There was also a question that came into us about Raw changing its start time, moving up to 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday nights. And this has basically become a talking point because some arena newsletters, emails went out informing fans that tickets they had for 8 p.m. start Raws were moved up to 7 p.m. And I didn't want to necessarily jump the gun with those emails because it's possible that WWE decided to tape an extra hour of content before the show for one reason or another. We've reached out to a few different people to get confirmation about this. Unfortunately, while we do have one source that said, yes, Raw is going to be moving up this start time, we haven't really been able to get to, so I can't sit here and tell you that is completely confirmed. What I will do is analyze the possibility of that happening, and it certainly makes a lot of sense during football season, especially when ESPN runs some of these double headers for Monday Night Football, where one game starts a little bit earlier, another game moves a little bit later, and it takes up the entirety of the WWE Raw broadcast. WWE on Monday nights has to figure out how it can capture and maintain audience. And that's extremely difficult going up against the NFL, especially when you consider NFL is on cable and Raw now is not a channel flip away. You actually have to go to a streaming service separately to watch it. So WWE is trying to make it so that, hey, you tune in, you're watching live, and you're going to stick with them through the remainder because the show is so good. And this is a difficult proposition because there's two different ways I have seen ratings trends when it comes to Raw going up against Monday Night Football. The first is that Raw suffers massively in the first half. And then if a game becomes a blowout, people will actually leave the NFL broadcast and go back to see what's happening on Raw. The other is where WWE actually holds strong at the beginning of a game. This is generally one that involves teams that are not quote unquote national teams. So think instead of the Cowboys and Dolphins, perhaps it's like a Panthers-Bucks game. Although I don't know how frequently that would be on Monday Night Football. But in a situation like that, WWE is actually sometimes able to maintain its audience at the beginning of the game, except if it's really close coming out of halftime or going into the fourth quarter, there can be a massive drop-off at the end. So by starting the show early, WWE is doing its best to kind of mitigate that. And they would also be saying, hey, if you stick with us, you'll be able to watch the end of Monday Night Football on a regular broadcast, probably mid-third into the entire fourth quarter. You're not going to miss that much if you dedicate the first half of your night to WWE. Will it work? I have no idea. The one thing I do know from the source that said that it is indeed happening, again, it's only one, it's not two. We try to give you two sources before we confirm anything here on the show or in our updates. That person said that as of right now, it's only earmarked for 1 month. So whether that's because the NFL and ESPN throw more at Monday Night Football at the start of the season than later in the season, or whether it's a 1 month testing ground before WWE makes the call on whether to do this, for the duration of the campaign, that all remains to be seen. But if it does indeed happen, which it seems like it's going to, I would think that as of right now, it'll happen through the month of September and everyone will reevaluate, how does this work? Are we, biting off our nose to spite our face, or is this something that's actually benefiting us in the long term? But this will be the first time that WWE Raw goes up against Monday Night Football since its move to Netflix. And certainly they need to put their best foot forward in terms of the TV product, but also the way they're scheduling the show. That way the NFL doesn't crush them, which it certainly does to pretty much every other program on television. The topic many of you have been asking us to address this week is what happened involving the, I believe, Knox Pro Wrestling show with this guy, Psycho Stu, who got, frankly, the shit kicked out of him by Raja Jackson, who, by all accounts, jumped him and beat the crap out of him to a degree that was not planned by anyone involved with the show. Look, there's really a lot to parse when it comes to this. And frankly, even though I'm fully aware of the story in terms of base details, not to necessarily quote Fred Durst, but there's a lot of he said kind of bullshit that's being flung around right now. The fact of the matter is that our eyes as professional wrestling fans, sports fans, people who follow pop culture, whatever the case may be, they don't deceive us. We saw what happened in this video, okay? Whether something was planned or not, it was not planned to be what it was. And that was this guy who was not a professional wrestler, who was the son of an MMA fighter, jumping into the ring, slamming someone, that person getting knocked unconscious from the slam, which a professional wrestler generally would recognize happened, and then they would stop whatever the plan was to ensure that person was safe and healthy. Not only not stopping after the fact, but then punching this guy unconscious in the face 23 times and not stopping until he was physically pulled off the dude. There's also video of him saying, yeah, I'm supposed to go in and slam him and punch him one time, but I'm going to punch him as many times as I possibly can, which is exactly what he did. Now, this Knox Pro Wrestling was a WWE ID affiliated school because it is run by Rikishi. That label was pulled immediately. And I saw people speculating, well, of course, WWE, they don't want the bad press. Well, yeah, no shit, right? This wasn't a WWE show. That's not how the WWE ID thing works. And if a school that's associated with them or an independent promotion that's associated with them loosely like this does something wrong, then they don't want to be associated with them anymore. It's really not a hard calculus to make. End of the day, this guy, Psycho Stu, is awake. Apparently, he's in real rough condition. There have been a ton of wrestlers who have donated to a GoFundMe for him. I believe I saw many people donate $1,000. A couple people donate like $10,000. So hopefully he's able to get the financial assistance he needs to, get the health resources that he needs to recover as much as he possibly can. I know that he broke bones in his face, lost teeth. He has very severe injuries to his head. I would assume not just a concussion, but potential serious head injuries beyond that. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say and what kind of take you all want from me. It was disgusting. The person never should have been allowed to do this spot in the first place. The way it went down, I'm sure could not have been predicted by the promoters or anyone else involved, but that doesn't make them any less liable for saying to someone who's not a trained wrestler, who does not have experience in this manner, yeah, go in the ring, slam him, punch him, just make a scene of it or whatever the case might be. I mean, there is liability there, period. This is not at all analogous to what happened. I want to say it was with like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, where like Ronda Rousey was in the crowd with Jessamine Duke or something like that. And they knew she was there and they said, hey, you want to like chop someone in the chest? So they brought the dude over and she chopped him in the chest one time. I mean, yeah, okay, she was not a trained professional wrestler, but they did a very simple thing. I mean, ECW back in the day, I think I've told this story on the podcast before. I sat first row right between like the ramp and the ringside area for an ECW TV taping in the War Memorial in Fort Lauderdale. And before the show, people were handing out weapons and distributing stuff. And I saw like a bunch of weapons go under the ring. And I said to one of the ECW personnel, they had halogen bulbs, like the long ones that you would use like in a kitchen or a workspace or whatever the case. I was like, hey, can I get one of those? And the guy goes, yeah. He shrugs, hands me the bulb. And then at some point during the match, I'm honestly forgetting, I think it was Sabu, but they literally, like, I handed the bulb to, I think it was Rhino maybe. I really got to get my like name straight. It was so long ago. I feel so old kind of trying to recount the story to you and not remembering who exactly was involved. I feel like I handed it to Rhino and he like bashed it over Sabu's head. Now, if I brought that from home, right, that wouldn't be my fault. ECW would have been liable for someone using that weapon in that type of situation. Just like Knox Pro Wrestling or whatever it's called is going to be liable for what happened here. I would expect lawsuits. I would expect continued police involvement. I think the LAPD is currently investigating the situation. All of that is deserved. I haven't seen everything that's ever happened in a professional wrestling ring, right? Like, I've only been watching for 3 decades, which sounds, again, like a long ass time. And I've certainly seen death matches, and I have a tape library from back in the day that's pretty crazy. Some of the stuff from Japan, especially. So I've seen worse stuff happen in terms of like more gruesome things, but I don't think I've ever seen something less acceptable ever happen. And that is really difficult to say. It's also really difficult to watch this. I saw the video, a dozen times probably between looking at it for podcast purposes and for work purposes because we covered it as a news story. And, it's disgusting. I don't understand for a second any of these people who are trying to defend this kid. I think Rob Van Dam, Mark Henry, some people are out there saying it's not his fault. He was allowed to go in the ring and therefore he just did what no, no, that's not how it goes. If you're putting someone in the ring, they need to know what the standards are. Like, you can do this, you can't do this. Look out for this, don't look out for that. I promise you, Logan Paul, Stephen Amell, Bad Bunny, all these guys, Jelly Roll, I guarantee you that as part of their training to get in the ring and wrestle, they were told if A happens, you do B. If C happens, you do D. Go to the referee if you have a concern. Go back to your corner if something happens. Whatever the case might be. They don't just say, oh, you have name value. Go in there and do whatever you want. Our talent be damned. It's not how it works. So, yeah, Knox Pro Wrestling, they should be ashamed of themselves. Raja Jackson, guy should be in jail. He assaulted a dude live on camera unprovoked, beyond the realm of what a professional wrestling agreement would call for. So unless he has it on tape where, Knox Pro Wrestling or someone else says, yeah, go in there, beat the ever-loving shit out of this guy, even if he's unconscious. Unless he has that, I can't imagine how LAPD doesn't make an arrest here. So maybe I had more of a take than I thought I did initially, but that's all I really can say about it. And we will see what happens. We'll continue covering it here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And I appreciate everyone's patience in us getting to it. We had a 2.5-hour WWE show on Tuesday. We try to keep our shows around, 90 minutes, hour 45 2. We don't want to go longer than that. But I guess because Vintage had been gone for so long in terms of doing an entire show start to finish, we had a lot to talk about. And because of that, I figured, this can wait until our Thursday show. And I think we have enough time here to tackle it. So that wraps up this amalgamation of news from WWE and this random thing that happened. I wish this guy Psycho Stu the best, obviously, and we're all certainly hoping for a speedy recovery. And I'd love to hear his side of the story, what his expectations were coming out of whatever altercation they had before the show, what he was and was not told. His part of this is going to be really important if he even remembers it. And that, unfortunately, is a legitimate concern, given a potential concussion, major head injuries, and possibly worse. And fingers crossed that it's not worse than that. So we'll move out of that and we'll start talking about NXT. We'll cover AEW over the latter half of the show. We do have second looks to handle, both from NXT Heatwave and AEW Forbidden Door. But before we get to the breakdowns, before we get to those second looks, which by the way are going to be extremely fast, I do need to remind you here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show. We're actually on track to do that this week. And news analysis posts every single week, usually on Friday. Again, you can get all of it. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We're a free show. We're an ad-free show. This is how you can financially support us. And I promise you, we will greatly appreciate it. So as I said, let's break down NXT. In terms of the Heatwave second look, I'm really just updating a couple match grades for you. NXT Championship, Oba Femi, Javon Evans. I originally gave this 4.25 stars and an A. We're bumping that up. 4.5 stars A. For me, it was the match of the entire day. Full stop. TNA Knockouts Championship, JC Jane, Masha Slamovich, Ash by Elegance. I had this at 4 stars A-. That was too high. 3.75 stars B+, and honestly, it was borderline B. So I was just very wrong on that grade. I wanted to make those two corrections, and that's really all we have in terms of a second look. Let's go ahead and talk about everything that happened this Tuesday on television. Ricky Saints opened NXT in the middle of the ring, putting over Javon Evans as the future of WWE and putting over himself for what he's been able to accomplish in 6 short months. Of course, Oba Femi has the one title he wants, and he decided to formally lay down the challenge because he's confident he's the one who can take the title off the ruler. Josh Briggs interrupted, saying Saints may be great, but he's tired of outsiders getting opportunities they don't deserve, and he's been waiting to get. Ricky said Josh looked like Sid from Toy Story, which was hysterical. And he said that he doesn't get in line behind anyone else. Ava stopped the forthcoming brawl, setting up a number 1 contendership with the winner going to No Mercy. She further explained that no one has heard from Javon since Heatwave, thus necessitating her find a new challenger, presumably suggesting that Evans would have gotten a rematch given the way the bout finished with the 3 count getting thrown out and all that stuff. This segment featured the best promo of Saints' WWE career by far. Not just his couple strong lines at Briggs, but his opening salvo setting the stage for the challenge. There was a confidence and belief in what he was saying here that simply had not been evident in prior promos from him. Briggs carried himself quite well too, especially because he again had to fight through the crowd's boos. Ava's logic was sound in the matchmaking, and I appreciated the mention of Evans because it gave credence to the idea that he otherwise would still be number 1 contender, but he's clearly hurt, so we can't make him that right now. We need to find someone else. So Saints against Briggs, this shockingly ended hour 1 and was not the main event of the show. Strong work both ways. Briggs landed a double rope run crossbody, which Saints avoided later, hitting a Michinoku driver. Then he landed a basement claymore before Briggs did a cool flip over backbreaker from the apron into the ring. Real inventive. Saints fully flipped out of a chokeslam, hitting an enziguri, but failing to lift Briggs for his finisher. He bounced off the ropes for a spear, missed an elbow drop. Briggs hit a chokeslam for a false finish. Saints ducked a clothesline from hell and a running boot, countering into Destino and a tornado DDT for the 1-2-3. Extremely strong match. Only suffered because of Ricky's kickouts. Both of them, for the false finishes, they were really weak. He's got to animate more on those. I would have loved to have seen Saints hit Briggs with Rochambeau. I understand why they didn't go that far. This was extremely solid bell to bell and all around. I'd say 3.75 stars B+. Briggs continues to impress when he gets to wrestle. NXT just needs to figure out a way to round out the entire package. This was probably Ricky's best showing across an entire program since joining WWE, and he was a deserving challenger after this for sure. Oba confronted Ricky after the match. Saint said Femi was impressive, but he can't be the ruler forever. Every reign comes to an end, and he should look into his eyes because he's the man who would absolutely end him. Oba said he only sees fear when he looks into his eyes, and when that bell rings, he will prove that Ricky is not special, but an ordinary man. He said he makes the exceptional average, and in this case, he will make the absolutely mediocre. The lights went out with Dark State appearing in the crowd, but not attacking at first. They said that holding the tag team titles means they're about to run NXT, but it doesn't make them content. Everyone spoke except for Cutler James because it was not a moment for comedy. The heels attacked, Hank and Tank saved, and the faces ultimately cleared the ring. I'm not sure we needed this whole 8-man situation just to create a match for TV, but I guess it's not the end of the world. The back and forth between Femi and Saints, that worked as the first creative build toward their match. With a full month to go, there's plenty of time to heat that up. Ricky was the right number one contender coming out of it, and it seems like it's going to be the only bout on the No Mercy card that I'm going to regret missing. It should be a no-brainer main event, and I also find it really curious that they set this main event with 4 weeks to go. Meanwhile, Oba's challenger for Heatwave wasn't set until the Tuesday before the show. I mean, that's a huge differential in terms of match building and card building. So I don't know if WWE thinks they need more promotional time for No Mercy or what's going on, but I just found it curious that they did that. Trick Williams cut a taped promo saying he would be headlining all 3 of NXT's major shows this fall because he's the biggest star the brand has ever produced, and anyone who had a problem with that could come find him and talk about it. We never saw him again on the show, and best I can tell, there's not a clear-cut number one contender for his title, nor a feud for him to get involved in immediately unless it winds up being Evans, who beat him clean on TV for that number one contendership. So I'm really not sure how that's going to be handled. Obviously, Mike Santana is waiting in the wings in TNA, but you got to believe they're going to do that match at Bound for Glory. Blake Monroe backstage at Heatwave asked Ava for a number one contendership, given she just took out Jordynne Grace, one of the most dominant women in NXT history. Kalani Jordan was having none of it, not wanting Blake to jump the line, pointing out she didn't get pinned in the triple threat that she lost. So Ava went ahead, made that match for TV as well. I could have sworn it was going to be a number one contendership, except there was already a number one contender in Lola Vice. So I just assumed incorrectly, and I really realized my mistake after the fact, but it was just a little bit odd the way that was done. So we had Jordan against Monroe. Blake prevented a handspring with a skull-crushing finale. Lonnie came back with a worthless cartwheel back elbow and then a quality X-Factor DDT. Grace charged down as the match was heating up, again chasing Monroe out of the ringside area. This time, Blake found the exit, but it was chained shut. When she ran back to the ring, Lonnie immediately caught her with an Olympic slam and one of a kind to get the win. So both of them were solid here, but this match was building momentum when it just suddenly ended because of all the BS with Jordynne Grace. And it was just so frustrating to me because the finish happened immediately after they got back into the ring. You guys know that's my pet peeve. It would have been way better for this to go another 2 or 3 minutes after that, with Jordan's presence ringside distracting Blake so much that she ultimately lost the match. That also would have protected her a little bit better from a weak-ass loss after a fantastic win at Heatwave. Locking the fire exit door, the overall booking of this, it was pretty smart. The execution at the end just left something to be desired. It's also pretty wild that the only women to beat Blake Monroe, Mariah May in 2025 are Toni Storm and Kalani Jordan, who now has 2 wins over her. That's quite a short list. Zaruka and Lola Vice fought Fatal Influence. The faces had a nice get-together backstage, preparing for the match when Jada Parker came up, giving Lola props. only for Lash Legend to again pop in talking shit. They went at each other with all the viciousness, Legend saying she got humbled and Parker saying Lash got squashed by Nia Jax and still isn't humbled. Then she got sick seeing Stax macking on Ariana Grace. It was just a little fun trip backstage, seeing all the interactions. Jane was later incensed at what happened at Heatwave, but said history cannot be taken from her. She was the first ever dual champion between the brands. JC also snapped at Jasmine Nix for having aspirations of her own, and Jazz actually stood up for herself for really the first time, I think, in NXT. So in terms of the match, Soul did a surfboard over the middle turnbuckle before we saw Lainey Reed watching from the crow's nest. JC eliminated Lola from a potential tag by running her into the steel steps. Zarya had a powerful hot tag before combining with Ruka for keg stand. Vice respawned for 22 straight kicks. Literally, I counted. Plus, I'm a Latina. Hip attacks 3 times. Booker T was acting like Quagmire during this. The guy was out of his mind. Jazz caught Lola with Nick's kick before the others took her head off with a combination Shining Wizard for a broken fall. The referee didn't allow JC to go for the cover as she argued about being legal. Fallon was legal and had just tried for the pinfall. So that was the correct call from the ref. Amid the chaos, JC got speared by Zarya ringside. Lola then ran Fallon into Jazz. Nix ate Soul Snatcher, and Henley took a huge back fist from Vice for the babyface win. The celebration was funny because Lola was like shaking her hips. Soul was able to do it with her, and Zarya just couldn't. So she just like bumped her butt. It was only on screen for a second, but it did make me laugh. High energy match, quality main event. It was a little surprising this finished the show over the men, just given the star power of Saints and Femi. But NXT was crowing about the strength of the women's division here, so that was the purpose. It was a flex. There have been occasional continuity flaws in some matches of late, so I really appreciated how the referee kept order here, and that built into the match story. Lola continues to impress over the last 2 months. She's absolutely deserving of this number 1 contendership. I do believe she has a puncher's chance at actually winning the title. The show is in South Florida. I just personally wouldn't do it. I wouldn't switch the title until either Monroe or Grace is ready for it. Let one of them beat JC Jane. I don't think you need to strap up Lola again when you haven't even strapped up Jada Parker. And Lola's never even won the North American Championship. So why are you kind of elevating her to this? To me, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. You know, the thing that's crazy about Fatal Influence, they're actually pretty great as not only a team, but a trio in the ring. You can look up their catalog and basically pick any recent match involving 2 or 3 of them. And it's always impressive how much chemistry, coordination, and teamwork they really effort. Whereas groups like Chase U or the Culling or D'Angelo family are never going to make it to the main roster. As much as I used to feel Henley was miscast in this team, I do wonder if they would be better off like going to main together as like a legitimate women's team that could wrestle singles and also split eventually. The name, the theme, the look, all of it just works. It took a while to get there, but they're there, and it's really, really a solid trio. Tyra Mayseal fought Alba Fire. Green Regime with Ethan Page plus Tavian Heights were all ringside. Some nice comedy with Chelsea Green, allowing Alba to hit a tope suicida. Tyra almost did a rear view while trying to leap a charging Alba in the corner. Fire hit a spike DDT with a great sell from Steel, though she stopped Gory Bomb, countering into a German suplex and putting in the ankle lock. Page grabbed Fire's hand to stop a submission. Tyra caught her somewhat distracted and got a roll-up win. Chelsea attacked from behind, then tried to slap Tavion, who stopped her, only to get attacked from Ethan with Twisted Grin to end it. Page laid a Canadian flag over Heights' body at the end. I hated this booking with a fiery, no pun intended, passion. Commentary spent the entire match crowing about Alba being the forever champion in NXT, UK that is, unbeatable for 2 years, whatever else they said. And then she comes out there and gets beaten via roll-up despite a 3-on-1 female advantage to a neophyte who lost 48 hours earlier to Chelsea. And this all happened in like 4 minutes, mind you. I know Alba is not treated or booked like she should be, but this was patently ridiculous. And frankly, it was pathetic. All of it as a vehicle so Heights could get attacked again. Why is Paige not trying to avoid this dude? He's a chicken shit heel. And why is Tyra's first ever feud in NXT with main roster superstars? That is rough. This all could have been accomplished with a backstage beatdown. They didn't need to do a match. She definitely, Tyra, did not need to go over Alba. I absolutely hated this.
That is one big pile of shit.
On a more positive tip, I'm beginning to believe that Page should actually get called up to the main roster alongside Green. They work incredibly well together. He would make a tremendous chief of staff or something for her, extending the group into the men's division. It would also be really unique to have a female-led and dominated faction. And if you put Page in there, he's strong and confident enough to play second fiddle, but not maybe seem like he's playing second fiddle the entire time. So I don't know that they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it, but I would. I think it'd be really unique and really exciting. Ren Sinclair and Kendall Gray fought Tatum Paxley and Izzy Dame. Ren was super nervous backstage because she didn't have a partner for the match, but Charlie Dempsey calmed her down, saying he got it worked out. Kendall then came in with Charlie positioning it as if she came to him for training advice. Gray chopped him and said that was false. She offered just to help out Sinclair. Kendall had a really nice run with a flatliner on Izzy before Ren hit a float over double underhook suplex on Tatum. Dame tagged herself in as Paxley was attempting a springboard. And while Paxley was getting submitted by Gray, Izzy decided not to help her. Rather, she hit a pickup Liger bomb on Ren and got the win. Tatum was unfazed by it. She was just happy they got the dub. This match was way, way too short. A lot of action fit into only a couple of minutes, but it barely accomplished anything because the Izzy selfishness of it all, it wasn't even given a chance to breathe. Now, Kendall did pop on screen. The pairing with Ren was interesting. We also got Ren and Tatum on TV and in the same match, all things the Silver King loves. But we barely got a legitimate taste of this. There's something really weird going on with Ren's matches. She's never allowed to wrestle for more than 4 minutes. And this is despite her being an actual good wrestler with independent experience. So why WWE doesn't trust her to go or work something longer? I just don't get it.
I don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't get it.
There were 3 sub 5-minute matches in the first 45 minutes of NXT. This was the one most affected by far, but all 3 of them, they needed 3, 4, 5 more minutes, and it just felt rushed. And I didn't understand what they were doing. Miles Bourne fought Lexis King in a blindfold match. Bourne was interviewed before. Realizing he's at a disadvantage, he asked the fans to help him by making as much noise as possible when he's close to King so he can hear something, feel the vibrations, and attack him. Bourne was able to land a nice dropkick. The primary gimmick here was King trying but failing to land offense, making himself look silly. He completely missed a tope suicida, which was the spot of the match, and you could argue it was the spot of the entire show. Lexis poked the referee in the eye, removed his mask, low-blowed Miles, hit the coronation, and then got the win. Solid heel work from King. Couple spots legitimately funny, but I was bored at the blindfold concept. For me, it never works. To be fair, despite my distaste for it, this may have been one of the better blindfold matches, entertainment-wise. People were laughing. They were having fun. It was all solid. There was a promo for WWE Speed coming to NXT. It basically just reiterated the rules. Ava then announced a tournament for the women's #1 contendership, featuring Candice LeRae, Lainey Reed, Fabi Apache, and Xia Brookside. Holy shit. Can someone explain to me why Lainey Reed is being pushed so hard? Is she a Nepo hire or something I don't know about? What's happening here? The title match for the WWE Speed Championship is going to happen at No Mercy. The men's side of it, by the way, wasn't mentioned at all. I said it on the NXT Heatwave Instant Analysis. I'll repeat it here and be a little bit more verbose. This makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, quick matches do fit in NXT. We were just explaining how many sub 5-minute matches there were in the first hour of the show. But forcing this onto TV is horrendous. Please explain to me who this benefits. Please tell me what this accomplishes. Why the hell is Soul going to defend her shitty little title that was not even TV canon until Sunday on a PLE when it was previously only defended on Twitter? Why isn't she getting a #1 contender for her North American Championship that actually matters? And I know what you're saying, Silver King. Clearly, this was a product for Twitter, and WWE still wants to sell it to someone else, maybe TikTok or whoever, so they want to prove it's viable. Okay, I understand the concept. Then tell me why the title match is going to be on a PLE. This is something that they could have easily run these 3-minute matches, whatever, on Evolve to put some interesting talent on that show. Or if you want to do a couple 3-minute matches on NXT and then you do the speed title on an episode of NXT, perhaps I could stomach it to a degree. But it really doesn't belong there, A, at all. And B, doing the title match on a PLE that you're asking people to pay outsized ticket prices for is patently ridiculous. So as far as I'm concerned, this is dumb, dumb, dumb in every way. And I don't mind if I get proven wrong at the end. But folks, I'm not going to be.
0.0.
0.0, Mr. Blutarski.
Stop trying to make WWE speed happen. It's not gonna happen.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
All right, that moves us off NXT. Sorry to end it on such a sour note. It was a very exciting episode of TV on Tuesday night, but man, this speed shit is really ranking the Silver King right now. Let's go ahead and move over to AEW, where briefly we will do a second look at AEW NJPW Forbidden Door, just like we did with NXT a second ago. I only have 2 quick adjustments. Unfortunately, both of them are downgrades for matches. The Women's Championship, Toni Storm against Athena, I had it at 4 stars, A-. I'm going down to 3.75 stars and B+. And also the TBS Championship match, Mercedes Moné, Alex Windsor, Persephone, and Bozilla, I had it at 3.75 stars B+. I'm going down to 3.5 stars and a B. Just a couple minor adjustments. Still a good show, top to bottom. The lowest graded match I had was Adam Copeland and Christian Cage against Killswitch and Kip Sabian. That was actually the lowest across both shows, Forbidden Door and Heatwave over for NXT. But 3 A matches on this card, a couple A- as well. Really solid top to bottom Forbidden Door. Now, getting into the week in AEW. We covered a lot of what happened on Collision already on that AEW Forbidden Door instant analysis. So we just have a couple other brief items from that show to discuss here. Primarily, we're going to be talking about Dynamite. In terms of match relevance this week, 4 of 13 were actually storyline relevant when they happened. That's 31%. And really exacerbating that issue is 1 of 8 matches on Collision were storyline relevant. 1 of 8 on a go-home show in front of an international audience trying to sell a pay-per-view. That's just not acceptable. Now, some of those did lead to 0-hour matches on the card, definitely, but that didn't make them relevant when they actually happened. And we'll kind of get into a little bit more about this as we go through Dynamite specifically. The crowd in Philly for Dynamite, the start of a residency there, they were great from an energy level standpoint. But basically, all it did for the first hour of the show was chant the F word as often as it possibly could. There were 4 such chants in the first 35 minutes of the show. At that point, I just stopped counting. All in all, it very much felt like an independent wrestling company being televised and not a major promotion, both in terms of the visuals, the way the show was booked, what matches were on the card. I don't necessarily say that in a negative way, but it was a significant difference from the way NXT looked when it was at the 2300 arena. I want to say less than 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. I also found it really interesting that AEW is fully leaning into the ECW aesthetic of it all. Like, they made shirts that are basically the ECW logo style, but with AEW. And, you know, that is a WWE property. Now, I'm not saying they can't do extreme or use that word or whatever the case, but they had 2 different shirts. One was just the logo and one was AEF&W. And like, NXT literally has an NXF&T shirt that is styled exactly the same. And I know you can't, like, you know, trademark or copyright a design like that necessarily. It's also, you're allowed to do parody, obviously. I just found it weird that AEW was like, okay, doing that. Like, they're just trying to co-opt something that WWE owns rather than just kind of say, we're in Philly, it's the home of Extreme, let's kind of lean on Taz a little bit more. If I was them, I would have gone with like an orange aesthetic and leaned into him and had him do match announcements and get in the ring and all this different type of stuff with Taz. But instead, and maybe Jerry Lynn too, because he's backstage. But so I just thought it was weird that they were so like okay with doing ECW when that's clearly a WWE thing. All right, in terms of everything that happened on these shows that we didn't already talk about. On Collision, Konosuke Takeshita beat Tomohiro Ishii in 10 minutes. Why? Literally no reason. Takeshita did win the G1 Climax. Congratulations to him. And this was Takeshita and Ishii, the match of the night. On Dynamite, Don Callis family beat Brodito and Jet Speed. This was the third time this match has happened in some form or fashion in the last 6 weeks, yet nothing led to it happening again. I reluctantly gave it relevancy credit despite that. Wardlow was by Callis' side during the match, but neither factored in nor spoke, so there was no follow-up whatsoever on his big return at Forbidden Door. There was animosity during Takeshita and Kazuchika Okada that led to a shove, so that story is still being told. What was so funny about this was everyone just wrestling, not giving a shit about the rules, trying to tag, except for Josh Alexander, who patiently waited on the apron like a good boy to get his tag. He caught and beat Bayley with a package pinning combination, a rare win because he's been jobbed out so frequently. Probably wouldn't have done two finishes like this in the exact same show, but it was an entertaining match for the fans. These all-star tags and money matches, they just don't do it for me. I generally have to care about why a match is happening to truly get invested in it. And I will relate this and something else we're going to talk about momentarily to the Dark State match against Oba Femi, Ricky Saints, and Hank and Tank that's happening on NXT, because that's an 8-man tag as well. So just keep that in mind, okay? On Dynamite, Hangman Page came out to fillet Will Ospreay for a good 3 minutes, even offering him a championship match when he returns. Then he threatened MJF to not use his contract against him, or he'd beat his ass before Callis interrupted, saying he wanted the title in his family. Callis said he would ultimately decide which member of the family wins the title, because it's basically the size of half the locker room. Facts. Then all the jobbers in the faction, relatively, came out to threaten Hangman, who attacked first before getting beaten down. Jet Speed quickly made a save. Hey, babyface is paying attention. With Kenny Omega following for a pretty clunky save, and ultimately the combination buckshot lariat V-trigger, which unfortunately went right to the dude's back. Then they shook hands after it was over. The positive here is the faces were not dumb and slow like they are almost every other week in AEW. Hysterical that it was against the weakest half of this family as opposed to actual badass heels like the Death Riders. I'm not sure I could be less interested in a next feud for Hangman than going through the Callis family gauntlet. And I got to give credit to Excalibur for groaning when he entered. He's like, oh, we really have to see Don Callis again? Dude, that's exactly how I felt. I know you were just being a babyface announcer, but at the end of the day, first time in a long time, I agree with Excalibur.
Thank you!
As I've said, there's just way too much Callis on these shows. It kills my interest. Now, unless we are going to get Hangman Okada or Hangman Takeshita, and maybe we get the latter of those two, but the dude just won the G1 Climax, so we really should be focused on the New Japan title. But unless we're getting something like that, I don't see how I could otherwise be interested in this. What's crazy is that this 8-man predictably got booked for next week, which is fine. That's storytelling leading to a match booking. Except the match booked for next week involves 3 people on the heel side who did not factor into the brawl on Dynamite, including 2 that are not even in the Callis family. So how does that make sense? If you're going to do a brawl on television, it's going to be 4 people on one side and 4 people on the other. Those 8 people should be the one fighting the following week. Why are you inserting different people? Again, 1 from the family who was not involved here, and 2 who are not even in the family. I'm talking about the Young Bucks. Now, I know they're aligned and they're adjacent, but why would Callis not have his own dudes fight? Does he think they're not good enough, so he needs to call in the Bucks? So that's what I'm talking about. Like, from match relevancy, like, okay, yes, it's going to be the same 4 faces against people representing Callis, but why is it not the 8 people that literally brawled on television, 4 of which attacked Page, who should want retribution on all of them? And then again, you think about NXT, going back to what I was saying. Imagine if Dark State attacked, Oba Femi, Ricky Saints, Hank and Tank, but then the match we got was Dark State, Oba Femi, Javon Evans, and Miles Bourne and Tavian Heights. They're all baby faces, but they're not the faces that were involved in the brawl. So that's what I wanted to say. On Dynamite, MJF backstage at Forbidden Door because he never, ever shows up to the first TV show after a pay-per-view for some incredibly strange reason. It must be written into a contract where if he works a weekend day, he doesn't have to show up the next Wednesday. I don't get that at all either. He ranted at Mark Briscoe, costing him the AEW title and the way he has been treated by the company recently. Then he explained that Tony Khan changed the rules of the contract, so he cannot execute it spontaneously, but only with advance notice. So when he does decide to sign it, it won't just be for a match, but for Hangman Page's soul. It was actually a fantastic promo from Max. Just disappointment that he didn't do it live on TV in this spot. It's also patently absurd in kayfabe that Khan can just change the rules around executing a contract when it's literally a contract that's already been written and it's in someone's possession. The rules are in his hand. How can you change them if it's in his possession already? That's like winning the lottery and them saying, actually, you're not allowed to take the lump sum after all. You have to take the 20-year, deployment of funds. F you mean I can't take the lump sum? That's literally the rule. Briscoe later cut a promo from home, first introducing his new baby boy before promising to set all of MJF's goals and aspirations on fire as revenge. Then he remembered Kyle Fletcher talking shit about him recently, saying he wanted to rekindle their rivalry and take his title. Look at that. A legitimate, logical title challenge with a backstory. More of that, please. On Dynamite, Darby Allin got a promo package showing off his ear, literally gushing blood, wiping it on a white wall, saying he cried when he saw dead bodies on Mount Everest, and Jon Moxley shouldn't set foot in the ring with him unless he's willing to die. Now, he spoke here as if their all-out match was already set, but nothing had been announced at that time. This was very much not for me. If you enjoyed it, great. Like it or not, the audio was horrible. You could barely hear the dude. On Dynamite, Mox beat Daniel Garcia. Zero reason for this match. Garcia hasn't been involved with Death Rider since February. The booking was for Garcia to look stronger than anyone would have expected, but Mox won with a transition small package. I will say that probably did more for Danny this match than most of his other losses, but it was really the same old shit at the end of the day. Wheeler Yuta grabbed the mic after the bell, declining Darby's challenge as Mox and Garcia argued ringside. It seemed like Mox was trying to give him props. We'll see if anything comes of that, but it feels like Garcia's booking has been like losing matches and being frustrated for 2 years now. I did see something he posted on social media, or AEW posted on social media, of Garcia saying, I wanted this match because all the babyface heroes came in and they took care of you guys, but where were they when I needed them? So I wanted revenge for myself. And I was like, man, that's a really good reason for that match booking. Why did this not air on social media Tuesday or Wednesday or earlier in the show before the match was booked? Why did Garcia not just come up to Mox backstage and say, hey, you may think you're done with us, but you're not done with me. I want you one-on-one in the ring. Slap him across the face. Why are we not getting that? And this is, again, the difference when it comes to match relevancy and storytelling. Because on NXT, they frequently book matches where there's not necessarily a prior relationship between the two people involved, but what they do is show us something that happened in the parking lot, in the kitchen, because of a prior match, whatever the case might be. They give us a reason for the match happening 99 times out of 100. In AEW, it feels like it's 40 times out of 100. And that to me is frustrating. Yuta stayed around after the break and cut a second promo, putting himself over for working hard in Philly when he lived there and no longer caring about fan support. He bragged about Death Riders taking out Will Ospreay, Chuck Taylor, Bryan Danielson. One of those, by the way, is not like the others. When the lights went out and Hook returned, looking a little bit more buff, Yuta just stood there waiting for him to walk into the ring, put Red Run on him for about 5 seconds. Then he did a Superman punch. This was terrible. Talk about a return that lacked impact, oomph, effort, care, a pure yawn. Preceding this on Collision, 2 action figures of Hook wrestled each other on top of the FTW title in a glass case. It looked cool. I could not understand the significance of this. Why was this the vignette leading to his return? And why did he return and he just did that? And that was it. No promo. Can he really not speak? You have Wardlow coming back. You have him coming back. Neither of them had anything to say on Wednesday night. On Dynamite, Darby fought Claudio Castagnoli in a Falls Count Anywhere match. This main evented, and unlike the Mox match, it was relevant. Allen attacked backstage to start. Claudio immediately threw him into a trailer, body slammed him through a flat screen TV. Darby later climbed a big beam as Claudio just stood there watching, waiting for a coffin drop. Claudio told the announcers to clear the way before basically repeating the Oba Femi Javon Evans spot, throwing Darby outside into the announce table. It's interesting that they did this so blatantly multiple days after the show. It's one thing to do it, just in general, because the spot was done way before Javon Evans. It's been done, who knows, 100 times, right, in professional wrestling history. But given that one was so spectacular, why are you doing it just a couple days later? Everyone's going to say, oh, Oba and Javon just did that. You know what I mean? It actually suffered a bit because the Oba throw, just by comparison, it was not only flat-footed, but it was sudden. He just was like, oh, shit, look at this guy. Picked him up, threw him. Whereas Claudio, he's like, clear the table. He's moving his arms. Get away, get away. And then he picks up Darby, does a running start. It was just like so planned, whereas the Oba one felt a little bit more improv. And that is why it had such a great impact. Anyway, Darby later dodged Claudio running into a leaning table. Castagnoli hit an avalanche gut-wrench suplex into a stack of chairs and then chucked him into the leaning table. It didn't break, so he power-bombed him through it. Frankly, it was a false finish, but it realistically should have ended the match. Darby ultimately hit a code red and 2 coffin drops without weapons to win. The match was awesome. I thought it was a little bit odd for the finish not to include a stack of chairs or a table piece or something to make the final moves more impactful, because it was false count anywhere, and yet it ended in the middle of the ring with regular wrestling moves, As Darby celebrated after the bell, Gabe Kidd ran in for a German suplex, literally dumping Darby onto his head. Allen did a double leg takedown of Mox anyway, then outsmarted them, shoving Kidd into Mox before running out of the arena. So is this dude finally officially part of the writers, or is it only when it's convenient? I'd say this was an unnecessary part of the conclusion to the show, because Darby standing tall over Claudio, I just feel like it would have been hotter and a happier way to go out. AEW really likes to end with heels standing tall, but Darby standing over Claudio, flexing, screaming Mox's name, frothing at the mouth as he watched him from backstage or from the ramp, whatever. To me, that would have been a lot more impactful than this. Now, there's a month left until All Out, so I presume Darby will have to go through the Death Riders gauntlet before Mox agrees to give him the match, even though I'll repeat, Darby spoke in his opening promo as if the match was already booked. 4.25 stars and an A for Darby and Claudio, better than most of what we got at Forbidden Door. If I'm being honest, I loved this match. This match was better than the Lights Out Steel Cage match. I know people will disagree with that. I enjoyed this a lot more. Now, Dynamite opened with FTR heading to the ring and a guy screaming F you in Cash Wheeler's face maybe a dozen times. The camera just lingered on that for some reason, allowed it to happen. Then there was a really odd microphone issue as Dax Harwood played into the angle of the non-legal man pinning him at Forbidden Door. He demanded the referee apologize, reverse the decision, name them champions. The guy refused, obviously, so they insulted, bullied, and shoved him until Adam Copeland entered, which was a distraction for Christian Cage to attack Stokely, leading to a pull-apart brawl requiring about 20 officials and security guards. Christian then said it was time to take care of Copeland's problem, and FTR's fathers are dead. Seriously. The match was then set for All Out. It was a hot start to the show. The crowd reacted well to everything. Felt like it could have been a lot more impactful had FTR actually won the titles, but I'm really not going to complain about a significant storyline involving older wrestlers not revolving around championships. It's just that in AEW's case, the tag team division is so dead in the water, it probably would have elevated the titles to have them involved in this feud. It also would have been pretty exciting to see the titles go from Hurt Syndicate to FTR to Edge and Christian. And then if you wanted Brody King and, Bandito to win them after the fact, they could have done that too. So this was solid all around, except for Christian still leaning on the dead dad shit. That was tired over a year ago. They're still doing it in August 2025. On Dynamite, Mercedes Moné, now with 9 titles, came out for her 5th championship celebration on TV. She said her goal was to smash Ultimo Dragon's record of 10 championships and warned anyone out there with a title she was coming for them. It was at this moment, for the first time, that I realized the Owen Cup is being counted as a championship, which it decidedly is not. She got into talking about Alex Windsor, once dancing on her man and saying she would put her in the hospital next to her husband. This was the whole segment. Mercedes, she has been doing a lot better on promos and character segments recently. This was a huge step backwards. Boring as sin, still feuding with Windsor as we expected. Seeing the Owen title there made me laugh. She's won enough championships. You don't need to kayfabe that one is an actual championship when no one has ever carried it around before. And it's not called a championship or recognized as one by AEW because it's not defended. On Dynamite, the trios titles were on the line. The Ops beat Ricochet and GOA to retain. You may be asking, why did these guys get a title match when most of their recent storytelling has been around Hurt Syndicate? Did they do anything to deserve it? Of course not. They've wrestled one trios match since coming together. That was on 0 Hour at Forbidden Door. That's it. Boom. Title match. Not even a backstage challenge or anything like that. Tagging was irrelevant here too. People literally slid into and out of the ring. MVP did show up late to smack Ricochet in the back with his cane. That allowed the champions to dismantle him with their finishers in the end. So at least there was a through line to that feud. But yeah, the match itself was absurd. Hurt Syndicate then came out after the bell. GOA attacked because Ricochet was still selling the finishers like dead in the middle of the ring. They fought to the back, and that was it. That match, whenever it happens, it should be solid. After all, we know the key tenet here.
4 big men slapping meat equals excitement.
On Collision, there was a short backstage segment where Harley Cameron failed to recoup the $100,000 that Chris Statlander won because, for whatever reason, it's supposed to come out of the Young Bucks' salary, which didn't make a shred of sense, given Khan is a literal billionaire. And even if it did come out of their salary, they wouldn't have to physically pay her. Tony would be wiring the money. Like, what kind of rinky-dink organization is this? Death Riders then surrounded them before Mox emerged from the locker room with a bag presumably containing the money. Didn't say a word to her. So the Riders continue getting her back without her asking. It would have been nice if this was even the least bit logical. Again, the money matches are inherently stupid. On Dynamite, Stat and Cameron beat Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. There were a couple cool power spots here from Bayne, including a toss into a cutter. This was a good reminder that tagging doesn't matter even in AEW women's matches. As much as I love Harley, most of her offense was just not believable. Bayne got taken out ringside before Stat won with a very clunky head scissors style submission on Ford. I like that there was another submission finisher here. Bayne attacked immediately after the bell, but Stat totally had the upper hand on her. So Bayne attacks first. Stat overcomes it. She's beating her, fighting her into the ropes. Megan is selling. And then Willow Nightingale runs in, gets between them for no reason that I could understand. Now, why would Willow need to save if Chris was dominating? Why would she come out at all if they hate each other? Harley raised their arms together trying to play peacemaker. I gotta believe this was all a red herring for Stat to go back from tweener to heel and join the Death Riders. Otherwise, it is tough to understand how all of this fits together into a cohesive story. The other option, of course, is that it doesn't. But there's too much Stat being featured across both shows for them to not have a plan here. So it's got to be something like that. I'm going to reserve more criticism, but this does have a problem fitting together, especially now that Willow is involved. And lastly, on Collision, Big Bill squashed a debuting Mark Andrews in less than 2 minutes. Crowd loved Bill. He chokeslammed Andrews through 2 chairs. Nobody saved. 2 former WWE talents wrestled on the show to really nice reactions. The other one, of course, being Isla Dawn. Both of them got crushed, treated like jobbers. And speaking of Big Bill, I just wanted to read something. I don't normally do this, that Enzo Amore posted. He said, in one night, Big Cass, his former name, of course, would clear 2 30 racks, 3 bottles of Jack, cases of wine. No human can drink this much except for Andre the Giant. What Big Bill has managed to do since he left WWE is far greater than what you can achieve in a wrestling ring. That is such a sweet thing for him to put out there. And I know Enzo, people have problems with him and he's not the biggest star and whatever. But we talk a lot about, Big Bill being a hoss and getting over with the crowd and really looking the part. He did in WWE, by the way, but he does in AEW right now. And when you put it against the backdrop of him having major alcoholism issues at a minimum, but substance abuse issues, let's say, and then you realize where he's gotten himself back to. First, I think wrestling in TNA, I want to say it was, and then getting signed by AEW and managing to get himself over with a portion of the crowd. It's really impressive. Congratulations to him. Like what Enzo said, what he's accomplished being sober and healthy, it is way bigger than the way he's booked or positioned or any titles he may or may not win in the future. I just loved seeing that. I saw it right before we taped this show. I was like, man, that is really sweet. And since we talked about something really negative early in the program that happened with independent wrestling, the redemption story of Big Bill, real nice positive way to end this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. As mentioned, we already have your WWE Clash in Paris Ultimate Preview in the podcast feed. We will be back Sunday, late afternoon, early evening with your WWE Clash in Paris instant analysis. Between now and then, don't forget that here at Getting Over,
It's all about the fight.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Follow us everywhere on social media at Getting Overcast. On YouTube, you can get full-length audio episodes, full-length video interviews. On Twitter and Blue Sky, you get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show. And on Twitter, before and after premium live events, you can vote in our pre and post show polls, which factor into our instant analysis episodes. Lastly, please remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week, usually on Friday. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We're a free show. We're an ad-free show as well. We would greatly appreciate your financial support so we can keep this damn thing rolling. All right, that is it for today. Silver King has done a lot of talking. Gonna rest the voice box for a couple days. Be back Sunday with your WWE Clash in Paris instant analysis. At this point, it is time for me to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.